Hi, my name is Henrik. I wanted to pose the question of how did Harry actually survive? And that by survive, I mean to refer to the fact that he survived Voldemort's attack on him as a child. And a few years ago, Patrick McCauley at this conference put forth an idea which I thought was really exciting. He observes about the events of the attack that in the moment that Lily dies, two things happen. Lily sacrifices herself, and Tom Riddle creates a Horcrux. In the next moment, Riddle tries and fails to kill Harry. And using this observation, Macaulay asks, was Harry defended by his mother's old magic of sacrificial love? Or was it that Riddle's own new Horcrux was already fighting back? And I think this is a really interesting way of looking at what really happened when Harry was attacked by Voldemort. And this is just not one question, however, but two. On the one hand, we can ask whether or not it's a fact that Harry was protected by ancient magic invoked somehow by Lily's self-sacrifice. On the other hand, we can ask the question of whether Harry was indeed protected by having been turned into a Horcrux already, as Macaulay suggests. Now, I will be discussing both these questions. And a warning up front, I don't have a clear answer to either of them, but I think by exploring them, we can potentially learn something about what really happened, or at least what we can think happened. But to do so, I think we should first review what we know about what really happened. And there are certain elements of the narrative which I think we can quite safely assume to be facts. And these are what I think are facts about what happened. The first is that Peter Pettigrew, in front of the attack, somehow reveals the Potter's hiding place for Voldemort. Then Voldemort attacks the Potter house. During or after the attack, the house explodes or collapses. James and Lily are both dead. Harry, however, survives. But Voldemort loses his body. Then Hagrid shows up before the scene attracts wide Muggle attention, and so immediately afterwards does Sirius. And this is when Hagrid informs Sirius that Dumbledore has already ordered him to bring Harry to his aunt and uncle. And if you find that last bit of fact a bit curious, you're not the only one, I think. How come Dumbledore has already given this order? Similar questions, I would argue, can be posed for each of these facts. We know so little about what really happened. But I think we can agree that these points are uncontroversial as to the reconstruction of the events. Because this list is so slim, however, and because there are so many unsolved questions related to them, I think that in itself allows us to put forth not just one alternative scenario like Macaulay did, but actually three different scenarios. And the first one is what we can refer to as the Macaulay scenario. And that is that Harry was accidentally made into a Horcrux by Lily's death before Voldemort turned to kill him. There is another scenario which goes something like this. Voldemort killed Harry's parents, but when he turned to kill a child, his soul was so fragile. And remember, Voldemort has already made 5 Horcruxes at this point. So his soul is quite unstable, we can assume. And perhaps it didn't take that final act of evil of killing an innocent child. And so it kind of either imploded or exploded. So it wasn't the fact that Harry was a Horcrux, and it wasn't the fact that Lily had sacrificed herself that caused Voldemort to fall, but it was basically an overreach. He overreached himself in his capacity for evil acts. There is a third possible scenario, and that is that Voldemort may have been in the process of intentionally making a Horcrux with Harry. He has killed James, and now he's turning to Harry to create a Horcrux. But in that process, Lily interrupted him. And that interruption caused the process to fail and somehow backfire, with Lily ending up dead and Voldemort losing his body, and Harry having been turned into an accidental Horcrux. Based on what we know about the events, I think either of these scenarios may be possible and even plausible, but there is no easy way to discriminate between them. But I think one way of approaching them and to evaluate them may be to ask the question of whether Lily's sacrifice did really happen. And if we ask that question, we are confronted with one particular problem, and that is that we don't have any eyewitnesses. That is, we don't have any eyewitnesses apart from Voldemort and Harry himself. And both of these obviously pose a bit of a problem. Harry being 1 year old and Voldemort being capable of lying more than he's telling the truth. And yet, the story about Lily's sacrifice is so widespread and well known in the wizarding world. So that makes us should make us ask the question of how anyone actually knows that Lily sacrificed herself at all. And I think if we look at how that story is first begun to be told, if we look at this so-called story of Lily's sacrifice, I think we can discover something quite interesting. The first in detail description we get of Voldemort's attack on the Potters is when Hagrid tries to explain to the 11-year-old Harry why Voldemort went for his family. And at least so far as Hagrid tells the story, there's no indication of Lily's sacrifice in it. He admits that he doesn't know why Voldemort tried to kill his parents or Harry, but he doesn't say anything either about Lily sacrificing himself for Harry. That story comes up with Voldemort for the first time. And it's in the context of him trying to persuade Harry to surrender the Philosopher's Stone, which Harry has just retrieved from the Mirror of Erised. So first, Voldemort tries to persuade Harry by saying that Harry should join him, so he wouldn't meet the same end as your parents. They died begging me for mercy. So that's one description of what happened when he attacked the Potters. But Harry refuses to believe this. At which Voldemort changes tack, and he tries a different story. Yes, boy, your parents were brave. I killed your father first. But your mother needn't have died. She was trying to protect you. Now give me the stone unless you want her to have died in vain. So what we can observe here is that Voldemort tries two different stories to provoke Harry into giving up the Philosopher's Stone. Harry doesn't believe the first story, but that doesn't mean the second story is necessarily more true. However, Harry does believe the second story, and he tells it on to Dumbledore. And he says, Voldemort said that he only killed my mother because she tried to stop him killing me. But why would he want to kill me in the first place? And Dumbledore doesn't want to reveal the truth to the 11-year-old Harry, of course. And then, and this is really interesting, Harry plunges on to ask, but why couldn't Quirrell touch me? And this is when Dumbledore, for the first time, at least to us readers, is known to reveal knowledge about what happened. And so he says, your mother died to save you. And this is important because Dumbledore has just heard that Voldemort has claimed this. And so he's mirroring that back to Harry. And not to explain why Harry survived the attack, but why Quirrell couldn't touch Harry when he had the Philosopher's Stone. The importance of this is revealed when we look at how Voldemort later tells the same story to his Death Eaters. So when Voldemort has just regenerated and regained his body, and some of his Death Eaters have joined him, he needs to tell them a story about what happened on the night when he lost his powers. And he says that his mother died in the attempt to save him and unwittingly provided him with a protection I admit I had not foreseen. I could not touch the boy. And this is quite fascinating because I don't think Voldemort wants to reveal to his Death Eaters that he survived the failed attack because he had made Horcruxes. So he kind of needs another story to tell the Death Eaters. And so he uses what had originally been Dumbledore's story, which he has given to Harry and which presumably Voldemort has heard being retold several times, either from Snape or from someone else. And he's using this story just the same way as Dumbledore is using it to put out some dramatic explanation of Voldemort being stronger this time round. I can touch him now, and then he proceeds to touch Harry physically. I think this is how that story originates, whether it's true or not. It doesn't tell us whether or not Lily actually sacrificed herself, but we can trace the story of the story. And we can ask whether Dumbledore and or Voldemort actually believes in the story they tell. And there is an argument to be made that they actually believe in it, whether or not it's true. But the truth is probably secondary in this case to the function that it provides, especially for Dumbledore. Because I think this is a story Dumbledore knows Voldemort is likely to believe in. The fact that Lily's sacrifice provided some kind of old magic protection. Because that story appeals to a widespread ideological belief within Wizarding Society that magic is somehow connected via blood. And we know that even though wizards believe in this and they've created a class society around that fact, this is not necessarily true. And the evidence for that is that we have both squibs, who are children who do not inherit magical abilities from their parents, and we also have Muggleborns, who are children of Muggles who nonetheless display magical abilities. So magic, at least, doesn't necessarily transmit via blood. So what is going on? Well, I think Dumbledore's character is quite revealing possibly here. Dumbledore is shown at a few moments in a few places to be quite the romantic. For instance, his comment on music is quite revealing. "Our music," he said, wiping his eyes. "A magic beyond all we do here at Hogwarts." And of course, I don't think Dumbledore means this literally. I don't think magic is beyond whatever is accomplished at Hogwarts in terms of powerful magic. But I think he tries to point the students to the effect that music can have on the human mind and soul. While it's not a typical magical spell, it's nonetheless something that we can experience as transformative energy. It does something to us. It puts us in a certain mood. And I think that is also how Dumbledore thinks about love. Love is a kind of magic, but in the sense that it enables us to do extraordinary things. So we can ask the question whether or not Dumbledore actually believes in the story about Lily's sacrifice that he tells Harry, and via Snape, perhaps Voldemort. Why does he run with it? And I think we can discover and discern two motives, two goals and strategies which Dumbledore has. And I think the first one is that Dumbledore needs to misdirect Voldemort's attention if he wants to defeat him. He must delay for as long as possible the fact that Voldemort can discover that Harry is his last Horcrux. And I think to delay Voldemort discovering this, the story of Lily's sacrifice, first told by Voldemort himself, whether or not it's a lie or Voldemort's spin on it, does the job for Dumbledore. Because Voldemort seemingly comes to believe that Lily's sacrifice did really cause some kind of old magic protection. At least this is what he tells his Death Eaters. So he is being misdirected by Dumbledore, potentially here. The second goal I think Dumbledore has is to enable Harry in time to accept his fate, that he must die for the Horcrux inside him to be broken. And again, I think the story of Lily's sacrifice, dying to ensure that her son lives, does the job. It tells the moral that sacrifice is sometimes necessary for the greater good. So it gives Harry a model behavior to look up to. And so, to conclude, we can say that it's not clear whether or not Lily's sacrifice actually took place. Our sources don't allow us to evaluate and be sure about that. But still, I think the old magic, which is invoked by self-sacrifice, may nonetheless have been real enough. It may be a real thing within the wizarding world, but I don't think blood connection have anything to do with it. And that is actually Harry's own perspective. As he claims towards Voldemort when they are fighting the final duel, Harry believes that by sacrificing himself, he has lovingly protected everyone defending Hogwarts. And he isn't, of course, related to any of them. So what I think the story of his mother's sacrifice proves to the orphan Harry is that his parents really loved him, and they loved him so much that love itself could defeat the darkest wizard of all times. I think this is the story that gave him the strength to believe in the power of love, despite growing up without experiencing any from family members. And I think this is really a good and an instructive story, even if it might not be literally historically true. But it also shows how Voldemort and Dumbledore both attempted to manipulate an orphan by appealing to notions of motherly love. And I think Voldemort tried to convince Harry of the futility of love, that Lily needn't have died, it was foolish to act on love, whereas Dumbledore tries to point Harry towards the very real results of actions motivated by love and the extraordinary things that may happen. And this, as Dumbledore says, was what made all the difference. Thank you.